So as we introduce this specific focus forum on research, I guess some of the things that have been clear as we've been living this for the last 6 months is that research has, for better or worse, I'm not sure, depending on exactly which context in, has been a major area of discussion, both within the sector, but actually perhaps more interestingly and to our advantage throughout the government as well. And there's been a much greater focus on the role that research plays for Australia and globally, and why research should be seen to be a critical part of our society, and in particular, which part is it that's being driven by the higher education component. And, you know, there have been times and discussions that I've been in where it's been, quite frankly, all a lot of doom and gloom. But there's also been just huge numbers of examples whereby quite quickly the research context has been able to be seen to be a really critical part in solving problems that have been around, that are around and we're dealing with right now, and also more broadly. So one of the things I think that is really critical when we think about UTS and the role of UTS and our research and researchers in thinking about our place in that broader research context, and with respect to COVID in particular, is that we made the decision very early to ensure that as much as our research as possible was going to be continued during the entire pandemic that, of course, we're still experiencing and having effects from right now. So that decision, I think, was really critically important, that we decided to do that. And I think it was really critically important for a number of different reasons. One is that it gave us the immediate context of thinking about, well, what does that really look like, and what does it mean as a university, and how do we support our people to be able to do that? And what we saw very rapidly was that people were able to think about what were the problems with respect to COVID, but also what were the solutions that could be achieved. We went within a couple of weeks pretty much of having none of our research being thought of as being directly applicable to solving issues around COVID, to having, like, quite literally tens and tens of different programs that were in exploration and or full on actively being carried out, that had immediacy of results into and achievements for whatever we were dealing with as both a state and a nation, and also within the global context. Those different endeavours, some have faded away, some have grown to be exceedingly successful in terms of the impact that they've had on decision making that's being done, and you'll hear a number of those today as well. I think the other really critical thing that has been clear is that without research, and without research being undertaken within the higher education sector, the short, medium and long-term impacts on our nation would be far greater than they would be if we continue to vibrantly support research. And we saw that most fully being recognised finally by our federal government last week with the announcement of the additional elements within the budget to support research and the higher education sector more broadly. But the research parts are quite diverse in terms of what they've done, and we are exploring how we can make the most advantage of that as a university at the moment. I think a couple of the other things that are really important that we think of is that there's been a real demand for expert knowledge as people have tried to work through everything that's happening with us. And the suite of people that we're going to hear from today are those that have been recognised as experts in their area, sometimes for the first time, quite scarily, but also that their expertise, their knowledge, their capability is going to actually make a demonstrable change. The other thing that has been really forefront in everybody's minds is that any potential decline in our capability and capacity in research during this time period is going to have long-term negative effects on our social and economic well-being. And so what does all this mean? What does it mean for us as a university? What does it mean for us as a society? And how do we start to actually think about our research and place our research in quite a different way than we might have done previously? So with respect to UTS, of course, in some ways, and I hate to say this, but the crisis has played really well into what is right at our heart and what we believe the purpose of being a university. And that's, of course, to create the biggest impact that we can possibly create and to seat ourselves fully as a public university. And I think that we do this across everything that we undertake. We've seen a huge, maintenance of our student enrollment because of the way that Shirley and the ATNL team really led the transition onto online. We've seen it in the uptake of the way that we engage with different communities to be able to work with them to understand what is happening right now. And as I said, we've seen a number of our researchers really pulling their capability together to be able to deal with different things that need solutions right now through to the longer term recovery. We've also really thought about how it is that we interact with those communities and with government to make it clear that we really are committed to being a public university, and we want to be able to work with them directly to be able to ensure that everything that we're doing is being utilised well by them, but we are also understanding their needs and being able to deliver. We're going to hear today from a large number of our researchers who have been really working at the forefront in terms of this COVID context and from a quite diverse range of focus areas.